Okay, so today I want to talk about point of view and point of view when it comes to content marketing and writing for our audiences and just how we present ourselves. You can think about this in relation to getting on podcasts and being a guest on a podcast. You can think about it in relation to just how you angle your content posts and things like that. And point of view is one of these things. I think it's really important to have a strong point of view because it makes you stand out from the crowd. But it's also kind of frustrating to define exactly what it is. And so what I've been trying to do is figure out how to actually help people figure out their point of view or develop their point of view. And so I've created a simple framework that I'm going to share with you and see maybe that'll help. One thing I just want to get into a couple of examples. So the three examples that stand out, there's three or four examples that I can think of that really stand out. One of those is Jonathan Stark. His tagline is "Hourly billing is nuts." I don't know if he actually has this as the title of anything, but if he wrote a book, it might be called something like that. And maybe he already has a book like that. So Jonathan, sorry if you do. But that's just one example, and so his core concept that hourly billing is not the right way to do things for consultants and experts and software engineers, that runs through everything that he does. And so his podcast is a slight tweak of that. It's called Ditching Hourly, and so you can see that's his approach. And so his point of view kind of feeds into everything that he does, and you can hear it. It comes through in everything that he talks about when he's talking on podcasts and when he's writing to his email list or his blog posts. So that's where point of view comes across, is when you can see it in the content or you can hear it. Another person with a strong point of view that's really clear is Blair Enns. And there's a couple of different ones that he has. He has very strongly held beliefs about the role of the procurement department, or the lack of a role for the procurement department when it comes to selling expert services. He doesn't believe that they have a place in the conversation, and I won't use the words that he uses, but he believes that quite strongly. And I know that because I've heard him talking about it a few times on this podcast, and I think he wrote an article about it. And again, it comes across through his content. It's clearly a strongly held belief. And that's not even like the primary thing that he talks about. It's just something that he believes that is quite strong. His brand is actually called Win Without Pitching. And that's because he believes that you shouldn't have to pitch. So he believes that you shouldn't have to, respond to tenders and go through the RFP process and all of that kind of stuff. So, and that's a point of view that comes across. And in fact, that point of view is so strong that that's actually the name of his company. And again, it's just a really strong point of view. Another person with a really strong point of view, somebody I had in the podcast recently, is Alan Weiss. And Alan Weiss, he is, I'm trying to choose diplomatic words here. He's an interesting character who is quite polarizing. And he likes to poke people because, as he says, people need to be poked. And if they don't poke, they won't grow and innovate. And so he is quite happy to be that polarizing character. Philip Morgan sent an email to his list a few months back where he quoted two consultants talking about the same topic. And when I read the quote from Alan Weiss, I immediately recognized, after about 3 words, I knew, okay, Alan Weiss wrote that just because of his no holds barred kind of approach. And that so his point of view is so strong that it actually comes across in his writing so quickly, in his voice. And so I think there's a relationship there between point of view and voice and opinions. And there's kind of all of these, they're kind of all merged together. So how does that actually help us to figure out our own point of view? Well, I think that it's a strongly held opinion or a group of related opinions. And I also think that there's something there where it's counter to prevailing beliefs, even to the point where it might even come across as slightly controversial. So, for example, Jonathan's hourly billing is nuts would be very controversial to a certain part of the audience, like for example maybe lawyers and accountants, or maybe freelancer software engineers, people like that, who are billing hourly, and so it's counter to what they believe. And the other thing that I think is important is that you must actually be able to defend your point of view. So you must actually be able to argue the case for it. Now, you don't always have to defend it, but I think that you have to be able to. So it has to be defensible. So I'm going to give you some examples that I have, and I'll give you the examples, and then I'll give you the defense as well. So, for example, I believe that trust is the most important factor in B2B sales. And the reason I believe that is because B2B projects are usually high risk and very transformative. And that means that there's a big requirement for trust. And so I think that building trust is really important, essential. So I believe that referrals are dangerous. And the reason I believe that is because you can't control referrals. They're hope marketing. And sometimes you'll get referrals and they're bad, or they're for an old service, or they're just not the right types of people. And so I think that referrals are dangerous to depend on. I believe that inbound is superior to referrals. And that's because inbound leads, when people are ready, they turn up ready to buy, and they don't need convincing. They don't need to be talked around, talked into it. They usually even know already how you work, so they're ready to go. And so I think that they're vastly superior to referrals if you can make inbound work for you. And I believe that inbound for experts means building authority. And so inbound marketing basically means that you have to create content. And so what type of content do you create? Well, B2B sales requires trust. And so when you get the cross-section of trust and content creation, it's about creating authority content. That's the kind of content that creates trust. And then I believe that specialization is essential in order to build authority. And that's because I think it's impossible to be an expert in everything. And the lack of focus will kill your content before you even start, because it's really difficult to write content about everything for everybody. It's just very difficult. And then another belief I have is I believe that vertical specialization is superior to other forms of specialization, to the point that I think it's actually like a silver bullet. And the reason for that is because with vertical specialization, your target audience actually congregates together. They attend the same trade shows, they're in the same memberships, they go to the same events, they read the same blogs, listen to the same podcasts, they talk to each other, so they congregate, so it's much easier to actually find them. And so those are just some examples, and I have a couple more, and I'm going to share those with you in a spreadsheet. But I just wanted to kind of give you some examples to go with this. So what's interesting to me is that we have the belief, and then we have the justification. And your point of view is the belief. Your point of view is also the justification, but the belief is the thing that you tend to put out there. And so, for example, some people will absolutely disagree with me that referrals are dangerous. And if I just said referrals are dangerous on Twitter, I would get people arguing with me. And in fact, I might just do that just for fun to see, because as Alan Weiss says, maybe people need to be bugged. But the thing is, you have to have the justification to follow up, but the justification doesn't have to be right there. Like everywhere Jonathan Stark has hourly billing is nuts, he doesn't immediately have his justification for that. The justification comes in the body of work. People will see it as they read and as they get into your content. So for me, the important thing there is that you have figured out what are my opinions, what are the opinions I can justify, that I have these justifications for, these arguments for, and then what do I want to lead with? Like, what's really important there? So I don't tend to lead with referrals are dangerous. That's not the one that is really important to me. I tend to lead with specialization is essential, because that's something that's really core to kind of it's fundamental to what I'm doing. And so I think that what you choose to lead with is important. And there might be, and another thing then is, can you actually turn that into a brand like Jonathan has for his podcast or Blair has for his company? So you can actually take some of those beliefs and actually make them your brand name. Now, I kind of did that with the recognized authority, because that's the goal, is to become the recognized authority. So that's kind of talking about that. But I think that Jonathan and Blair have done that more directly. And I think Liston Witherell has Serve, Don't Sell as his podcast and his brand. And that's just another example of somebody with a point of view as a brand. So to wrap it all up, how do you actually create your point of view? How do you develop it? Well, I think that if you start to list out what are your strongly held beliefs, and then also add to that your justification. And it's just nice to have that. But I think that the important part is what is the strongly held belief. And I'll just give you some questions that might help. And I just have them here in my notes. The first thing is, it's your strongly held beliefs related to the problem that you help your clients with. So, this isn't talking about your personal beliefs and things unrelated to business. Like, this is specifically around your the problem that you're solving for your clients. What commonly held beliefs do you passionately disagree with? Like, what is out there that you really feel people have this wrong? And that's a good place to start. Another one is, what should your clients stop doing? Or what should your clients start doing? And if you answer those questions, that might lead you to some of your beliefs as well. Are there any myths that you want to debunk? So is there something that you feel that this is a myth, this is totally wrong, and that becomes one of your strongly held beliefs, and that could be a point of view. And then finally, think about things that seem counterintuitive. Like, is there something that seems wrong, something that you believe that seems wrong if you leave out the explanation? And so, for example, hourly billing is nuts or referrals are dangerous. If we leave out the explanation, that becomes controversial. And so, and that's where, you can start a conversation. But that might be a really core belief for you, and that might be a point of view. And finally, is there a core belief that underlies everything that you do? And so is there something that's kind of behind it all? And maybe that could be like a leading point of view for you. So I've been thinking about, how does all this work together? And for me, the point of view, it's like a kind of the intersection of all of these things, because all of these different beliefs together, that's what makes you unique. That's what gives you, I think Ian Brody calls it, a distinct point of view. And that's what makes you stand out from the next person, because you're going to be talking about something in a different way to them. And over time, you will solidify, you'll figure out different ways of wording it, you'll wordsmith things, you'll learn what's important to people, what people react to. And over time, it may develop to the point where people actually recognize your writing when they see it quoted in an email. So maybe you won't get there, but and I don't know if that's important or not, but it's certainly interesting that you could actually get to there. So that is point of view. I think it's important to think about what your point of view is and start to develop it. So what I'm going to do now is share the spreadsheet with you and let you plug in your strongly held beliefs and arguments for those, and that might help you in developing your point of view. Once you've that done, the next thing to do is actually start to incorporate that, to think about, how do I incorporate that in what I'm writing, what I'm saying? You probably do to some degree already, but I think it's good to think about doing that at a more conscious level. And once you start thinking about this, I think that it will start to seep into the content that you're creating, and it will help you create content that is maybe less bland, because you're adding some of that kind of perspective in there. So I hope you found this useful. Let me know. I'd love to get your feedback on this. Thanks for watching.